Hi there, everyone. I'm Michael Wayne with Voices for the Future. I'm with my co-host, Anadea Judith. Hi, Anadea. And we are fortunate today to have Steve Farrell as our guest, talking about a new universal dream, which is the name of his book, A New Universal Dream, My Journey from Silicon Valley to a Life in Service to Humanity. So I'll tell you a little bit about Steve, and then we'll begin more. At one time in his life, Steve was living the American dream. In the 1990s, he co-founded and led two high-growth technology companies based in Silicon Valley that were featured in the Inc. 500 and spanned the United States and Europe. But something was gnawing at him, perhaps, if that's the right word. And he read Neale Donald Walsch's Conversations with God. And then he had a meeting with Neale Donald Walsch, and that put Steve on a different trajectory. He eventually left Silicon Valley and the trappings of material success, and with Walsh co-founded Humanity's Team, which is an organization with 700,000 friends in over 150 countries. And Steve is currently the worldwide executive director of the nonprofit, which is based in Boulder, Colorado. And the mission of Humanity's Team is on helping people throughout the world awaken to their deeper selves and the interconnectedness of everything. A noble mission indeed. So welcome, Steve. Thank you for making the time. So I think our story, yeah, I think our conversation should begin with a little bit of backstory. I know it spans 20 years or more, so you don't have to go through everything, but you had that successful life, you had the American dream. So, how did that all go? And you didn't come from success or material trappings growing up. So tell us a little bit and how the trajectory went.
Love to do that. So, as you mentioned, I grew up probably like a lot of your viewers, in the 70s there when I was going through graduating from high school in 75. And so back in that time frame, a lot of divorced parents, my parents divorced when I was in the sixth grade. So together with my sixth sibling, we lived with my mother, divorced, and who had a full-time job raising seven kids. Isn't that something? So that was actually, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, it was you got out, you got a job early. I paid for my braces in the sixth grade, because from my paper out, just sending $5-10 a month to the orthodontist, and that was actually what set me, I think, on the path to the kind of life that I have now. Early responsibility, small home that I grew up in, about 1,250 square feet for a lot of people and a dog. So now, I think in many ways, my story is like everybody's story, our generation and generations before, in the sense that when we finish college, it's always this setting out for an adventure, discovery, and treasure, in a sense, right? If we want to go kind of build that great life. And so this is what I did. I went to school there, college, and grade school before that in the Washington, D.C. area. And then I moved out to San Francisco, had a couple of jobs, including with IBM, where I got some really excellent training. And then I set out on my own. I started a couple of companies there, and I was just in the right place at the right time because the internet was born there in, they say 92-ish. And we started our first company in 1990. So used furniture, two guys very inexpensive executive suite. But right place, right time. So boom, that company went to 75 million, 170 plus people in 10 years. And then we birthed a second company inside of that there in the eighth year that we took to 75 million in 2 years. And this was all on the back of the internet. It was in digital communications. Now, um, so what happened is that landed me in I'll call it the old American dream, and the American dream starts with what we want for actually the whole planet, which is equal opportunity, and access to good education, right? This is what the American dream is built on. Now, the upper rungs of that ladder, though, go into this whole fame and fortune and power over thing. And because of how I landed and the growth of these businesses, I did end up in the center of wealth creation there in Silicon Valley. I was invited into those clubs, and the current governor of California, who's really out there in a big way, was one of 60 people in my chapter, and other people that were equally bright and creative and public speaking and all of these kinds of things, leading companies. He was, of course, in government himself. Um, so, but so I saw firsthand what many people read about, some people experience, which is this whole uh, private club and private jet world. And candidly, while it was pretty spectacular for a person like me growing up the way I did, there also are the things that are sometimes talked about, but not talked about enough, really, which is that it's a land of wanting more, always wanting more, which creates this mirage of you get more, and then, well, now we still want more, and it's prioritizing wanting more. And that then puts all this pressure on your relationship with your partner and your kids and your best friends and your coworkers, because you're prioritizing wanting more, right? So I realized as I was out on my own adventure, this discovery treasure thing, that this isn't the thing that I'm really here to do. And I went through my own personal awakening, and thank you again for that generous introduction, Michael. I read the Conversations with God material. Neale Donald Walsch, of course, wrote these 9 books. And the God really that I had on some level understood my whole life spoke to me through those books. And even though I was raised in the Catholic Church and altar boy and all of that, I never really felt this whole judging, oh, you better do this or else. I never did feel that. I always felt like God was in my corner, with a wind at my back, supporting me on my journey. I'd always felt that. And so when I read then in Conversations with God of this whole, we're all offspring, right, of the one, made in the likeness and image, emanations of actually, you know, uh, of the Most High, all of us here in the flesh and the earth too, in animal life and plant life, that divinity is incarnate, right, is what life is. So as I was reading these beautiful messages, I was like, wow, on some level, I've felt like I've known this my whole life. And it was so freeing and so just so beautiful. So I did lose my passion for business. And of course, I was seeing these things I bring up. I'm covering them only very briefly here. These things that were like, oh, this is not for me. Uh, and so I did then do the big detour, the big U-turn, where I did sell everything. I left those business associations. I left Silicon Valley. I moved my family to Boulder, Colorado, where I am now. And as you mentioned, I launched then Humanities Team, this nonprofit 501c3 focused on transformational education with Neale Donald Walsch almost 21 years ago. So, and then, okay, coming back to this whole adventure, discovery, treasure thing, then I found this thing that is, I believe, is our generation's thing. And it's why people are here watching us now is this is our treasure. This is the true delicious living, and we can live in it anywhere in the world, from any home, any region of the world. We really find it, and it's not wanting more, more, more. And as we're wanting more, of course, that's creating all of these horrible we're life, the earth is refrigerator, these things, wars and things that come from this wanting more. Whereas in this conscious living thing, which is kind of how we frame it, though it goes by many names, in humanities team, we call it conscious living. But so in this conscious living thing, it's not only delicious, but of course, as we all know, once we walk through that door, so to speak, or come into our awakening, we naturally reach out and support, and we're in service to the earth, to each other. And it's not that we can do everything, but we're guided to do something, like you all, Michael and Anodea, start this beautiful program, right? And writing the books and doing the seminars and creating the classes and all the things that you do. And the viewers they're all led to something, just as I was led to humanities team. So this is the beautiful treasure. My book really, more than anything, is a story about that whole journey to in adventure discovery, to treasure. And I share, the story at the end of the treasure is this: it's conscious living. This great migration to conscious living that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are a part of that. I mean, I've often said that if everyone pursued the American dream, it would create a collective nightmare. And it is creating a collective nightmare.
Yeah.
But you chose to turn that to the new universal dream. And everybody, this is, well, we got a tricky Zoom thing. This is the book. And it's fresh out, and I've just read it. It's a wonderful story. It's all the ins and outs of the Silicon Valley life and your change and all the struggles you went through in building humanities team. It's a beautiful and inspiring story. You have been so central with your vision and just holding on to that really tight and not being deterred from it. And I'm sure it wasn't as easy to make money doing consciousness as it was to make money in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, as we know, just because you all have made this your life too, there are beautiful things that come back to us. We're blessed in so many ways. And yes, of course, it's not the top line growth, but that's what's creating the nightmares out in the world, where we're trying to race to the highest, top line growth that we can race to, and treating the earth as a refrigerator.
Right. Yeah, and a warehouse that we can take anything we want from without putting it back. Yeah. So so what you call this the new universal dream. So what is that dream? We're talking about the future here, and you as a visionary have a dream. You have a vision of that future. Tell us about what that new universal dream is.
Yeah, the new universal dream is there again, many words I could use. I'll use just in the last couple of days. It's the one that keeps dropping into my head now is divinity incarnate. So it's the simplicity of that, that which we've heard, again, this likeness and image, omnipresence. We've heard these terms forever and ever, and they're like, they just kind of, oh, I hear it, just kind of go over our head. Yeah, yeah, we just live our lives as some separated person walking around. Well, the new universal dream is we don't just let it go over our head. We just really let it in of, okay, I am actually from the Most High. I'm a son, as you all are daughters and sons, emanations of, in the flesh, right? Divinity incarnate here to serve life. It's what we do, because it's not just one of us, it's all of us, and it's actually the whole of the cosmos and the universe. And as I understand it, as these things, conversations with God and other materials, as they talk about life out in the universe and in the cosmos, this is what these advanced civilizations are doing. They're serving life first. And even, I came from this Catholic Christian background where they talk about, we're all serving the kingdom. Well, guess what the kingdom is? The kingdom is serving life first. It's seeing, unfortunately, I'm not sure that in my Catholic past and those out in the world that come from these religious traditions today, are clear, even though it says likeness and image. And likeness and image means a perfect replica. It means that you are it in the flesh. But again, it's just kind of a whoosh over your head. We don't really let it in. We don't really live into it in its fullness. And this whole, when I'm talking about this delicious living and so on, and we'll probably put many words to it here during this program, that comes from, for me, it comes from really deeply, deeply knowing this divinity and the flesh thing. And really, this is what I'm living into, is where I understand it, and I'm like, I'm not gonna resist it anymore. I'm not gonna have cognitive dissonance go on anymore. I see it, I hear it, I feel it. I'm gonna live into it, and in living into it is where the beauty comes. So that's the new universal dream, where we stop resisting, and just like other advanced civilizations out in the universe, we really live into it in its fullness. And what I've experienced is the more, and of course, it's a deepening into thing, and there's no end zone, there's no there. It's a spiral staircase where we just keep climbing. And the higher we climb, the more beautiful it is, and the more blessing there is. So that's the new universal dream, where we're doing that together.
We're letting the divine work through us. We're instruments of the divine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I like to, I'm in arms and legs and lungs, and say, just bring it on. The world's got lots of challenges. Bring it on, and I'll get up, and every day I'll do my best, and then I'll get a good night's sleep, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had it in the early part of your book, Steve. You had a chapter that I wrote a quote from there. The chapter, because I really like the phrase. It was called the sugar high of wealth pursuit, and it really captured first the phrase, and then I'll read the quote that you have from there, because it's a really interesting quote. But it kind of captures that phrase, both your own dichotomy in your life from your wealth pursuit to who you are now, and also the challenges that we face in our society, especially those people, those going after the sugar high and more, and how they're affecting and how their actions are affecting, in not the greatest way, our society, our country, and our world. So this is what you said in it, in that chapter, The Sugar High of Wealth Pursuit. You said, and so as I say, this is interesting. It might be, as you say, it might be hard to believe, but just as life is painful for those who have too little money to pay for their life expenses, it can also be painful for those stuck gathering more and more financial treasure with no sense of full. So I'm wondering if you could say about that, because that says something to the pain, that the world experiences as expressed by the people with that pain of going after that sugar high.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, honestly, I have a lot of compassion for Mark Zuckerberg, or Bill Gates, these people that Elon Musk. I have a lot of compassion for them, because I think it's very painful, honestly, the life they live. Um, there's no, it's worse than a mirage. That kind of gets started what's bad, but it's very transactional where we're living this way, and we often talk in relationships of transactional and relational, but there's the divine presence that's over, on the right side of relational, which is what this is, conscious living, where you're open-hearted, you're in service, you're seeing the sacred, and yourself in the world. You don't, we're not objects talking to each other. If I need this, and well, I'll give you that if you give me this, which is kind of how the world works. That's going on in spades. There's a sense of isolation you don't feel in where we're in what I'll call unconscious here, where we haven't awoken, come into this awakening experience yet. We just feel like our self is this smaller self. It's our body, that was raised by and brought into the world by two parents. We don't have any sense of that. They're just the airport terminal. They delivered us to the earth. Yeah. We came from the Most High, and again, we're actually emanations today of the Most High. They do not experience that, and they're experiencing the transactional. They're experiencing the isolation. They're experiencing something, adoration, because in today's world, that fame and fortune, power over, and adoration actually creates the jail, because then you get stuck in the adoration, believe, and I've seen it. Okay, I've even lived in it, because there's two companies that's people were throwing that at me. Everybody wanted me to complete their sentence, because they'd say, "Oh, this guy, started these companies, da da da," and they give their power away. You walk in and oh, and they start talking, then you start talking, they stop talking. There's no fulfillment in that. They're disempowered. You're in some false sugar high reality. So the whole thing is terribly dysfunctional, honestly. And where we can go through this awakening experience and really come to see and feel and understand, taste and touch who we really are, this divinity experience, divine presence. Oh, that's, as we know, that is so different. Looking out my window now, nature is in this space all day long. So, which is a beautiful place to have prayer or meditation where we just are connecting with that, with nature, where we're brought into the fullness of what I'm describing here. So that's just a little bit on the sugar high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure that when you went from Silicon Valley to Humanities Dream Team, um, you still had to conduct business. You didn't escape the business model. But one thing you talk about in your book is starting the Conscious Business Alliance. And you also talk about how you had to shift your leadership style. So actually, I'd like to hear more about what you shifted in your leadership style. What was different and what was the result of that shift?
Yeah, boy, my leadership style, there were stories in there that talk about that, starting with that story that was it sounds kind of trite here, but it was very scary for me, where I threw out my time management system. And I'm not, by the way, suggesting everybody go throw away your time management system, but I myself was in this deeply transactional way of leading, where on weekends I just gather all, the 20 things for this person, 20 things for that person, and to just keep things on track. And I realized, as I was going through my whole awakening thing, that there was no open heart in this at all. This was totally transactional, of where are we on this and this and this and this and this. And so I realized, boy, I have to, I have to throw out my time management system. I've got to go just open hearted and be with people where they hear me and I hear them. I thought I thought I might destroy my company, actually, that first one. And the company took off, of course, because that's what happens when we start talking heart to heart. We open ourselves and we're in service in these things. So that was kind of the beginning of how this whole, more deeply conscious business thing happened to me, as I was just experiencing, what this is and how this works, and that we don't need to be afraid of kind of old, even though the well-trodden path is here, where we go off on the road less traveled with what we believe to be true. It works, and in fact, that's the conscious journey. One of the most important things is that we're paying attention to that still small voice that's guiding us, and those well-meaning people around us, including family members and the noise in the world that are saying don't do and don't go. We're saying thank you. I know you care about me, but you're going where you're supposed to go. So now on conscious business, though, conscious business is just now putting into practice in a business context these things that we're talking about. So, just starting with the business itself instead of the old entrepreneur model, which is find a need and fill it. We've all heard that, right? Now there's a second bar that we have to cross. It's not just find a need and fill it, because we ask the second question is, if I fill that need, is it going to create better, happier, healthier homes, communities, and a world? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, then there's no way we're going to go start that business. It's a higher purpose now. Mm-hmm. It's all about the mission is the serving life, right? So that's huge. Now, then as I learned within Humanities Team, as it's grown, we're coming into our 21st year. It's also about people that, yes, of course, have the awareness of these things that we're talking about, but the embodiment part is crucial, because what I found is there were then and are now many people that are still just kind of understanding the concepts. They're very drawn to them, but they're not yet embodying them, and they can have very sharp elbows, inside an organization. One of the things that I experience and I see in Humanities Team, where people are embodying these things, they're expressing these teachings, is we don't have sharp elbows at all. There's real deep listening. There's real gratitude and appreciation for people's contributing. It's holistic in a really sacred way. It's a completely different type of culture than, say, Silicon Valley, where it's more alpha male, and pound the table, and the board said we're doing this and this is what we're doing. There's none of that going on. It doesn't work that way at all. Inside the organization, it's more of a download of, we get a download of, oh, make conscious living pervasive worldwide by 2040. And we go, yeah, that's our download, and then we're all just kind of working in step to make that happen. Everybody to the very best of their ability. So it's a completely different culture, conscious business. It's beautiful. I find in humanities team, there's just a love for each other that's really pretty amazing. And the productivity is off the charts. Now, you never create an environment like this for the productivity. That's not, we're not chasing the ends like that. It's the means that we're creating. And then a byproduct of that, fruit of that, is the productivity, where everybody just gives it their absolute best, because it's not a career, it's really more of a calling here. And we're really, really earnestly doing our very best. And that means there's not any of the craziness that goes on, out in the Western world. I'll stop there.
Yeah. I love that expression, not a career, but a calling. That's really, a good soundbite for the shift. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of shift, your life has been one big shift from where you were to where you are now, Steve. So I'm curious, since you were around, you had colleagues who were movers and shakers and perhaps still are in Silicon Valley. Do you still keep in touch with them, and do you have it, and whether you do or not, do you have any sense of what they thought of your own shift and where you're at now, and what they might think?
So the only one that I've had fairly recent communication with is a woman named Andy Cunningham. She was the Steve Jobs woman that when the Mac was launched, she was the woman that coached him and guided that whole process. And so a lot of the history of Apple, she's in the museum there in San Jose, she's called in to speak and stuff. She's an amazing woman, Andy Cunningham. And I did do a little work with her fairly recently. She was one of the more progressive ones, where the kinds of things we're talking about, we're still bleeding edge, right? With this, it's getting out there. There's more and more conscious living, but it's still very bleeding edge. And she had a heart really that was leaning in this direction and doing really progressive things, and even helped me. In fact, it was a conscious business campaign I was working on. She came in and helped us a lot with that. But the others, I would say more, the process as I was leaving was, as I was saying, I said, I'm not really a business person anymore. I'm going down a spiritual path, and so these meetings that were business, and I said, I don't know how I'm going to contribute to that, because I'm really not doing that anymore. And what I think they loved me and I loved them. And it was just sort of a parting of, it's just as we all, even in our lives today, we'll sometimes head off in different directions, where we just have different visions of who we are in the future. And we kind of came up on that, and a few of them threw ideas at me to say, it can work, and you can stay, and this is how you can make it work. And, that's what people do when they care about you, right? But so we did just kind of go our separate ways. And that's it. I think they probably still feel good about me, and I certainly feel good about them.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about something you call PACE, P-A-C-E, Planetary Awakening, Conscious Evolution. And of course, Michael and I are both from the Evolutionary Leaders Council, as are you, based a lot on Barbara Marx Hubbard's idea of that we are at a point in history where we can consciously evolve. And so I'm really interested in this, because this has been my dream as well. And what you're doing to further, well, just what's the pace?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. So important. So as you mentioned, pace, planetary awakening, conscious evolution. So, and we're saying we need to pick up the pace. So how do we do that? So This was another one. As I mentioned, our strategic planning is just kind of a daily practice where things are dropped into our head. I think, you all probably relate. I'm sure your books, your classes are the same thing, right? So,
but I want to come to one of your meetings.
yeah, well, that'd be wonderful. Yeah. So we'll keep doing more of what we've been doing here at Adea. So, okay, in the last 6 months, this happened, which goes straight at this question you're asking, Anadea. As I was walking around my kitchen one morning, and this thing dropped into my head that was huge, and I could feel like, oh boy, this is big, and I didn't understand it at all. And the term was Galileo moment, and I was like, what in the world is a Galileo moment? Why was that put in my head? It was one of these things where you better, if you don't know what it is, you better go find out what it is. It's like,
Yeah, or you
okay,
might be subject to house arrest.
so here I go. So that started me off on in doing research. And it's like, this is now the most central thing to all of what we're doing in Humanities Team today. And we blogged on it. We've created master classes around it. And what it is here's the short story, is Galileo, and people probably remember, early 1600s, leading scientist, physicist, astronomer. And telescope had just been invented by the Dutch. He created his telescope, looked up into the heavens, and observed that, oh my gosh, the church and the whole world was, Earth was the center of the universe. That this was the whole basis really for life in the universe, is the Earth was the center of the entire universe. And this was a serious teaching. It wasn't some little teaching. Also, there was a Roman Inquisition and a Spanish Inquisition, around, which said, boy, this is not the time where you want to go challenge these things that civilization is built around. So, but with his telescope, he observed that the Earth is in a solar system with other planets revolving around the sun. And the sun isn't at the center of the universe. The sun is out, on the side of the universe. So he was bringing his research out to world opinion and sharing, we're just the whole basis for our reality is off here. Boy, did he get in trouble. He was immediately put under house arrest.
Right.
And he was told, you've got days to recant or you're dead. This is, again, we all heard about these inquisitions. So he recanted, as all of us would, right? He wanted to save his life. He was still put under house arrest to the day that he died. But what happened is others with telescopes observed the same thing. They said, what Galileo shared is true. We are not the center of the universe. And so the whole world changed there within a period of years of this research that Galileo shared with the world. So in a sense, then you've got one very brave person that, boy, did he pay the price. But there was a truth, there was a false belief. And he went and shared what that false belief was and what the truth was. Mm-hmm. So it didn't take me long to figure out why Galileo moment was dropped into my head. I was like, this all sounds very familiar. So, the Earth was the center of the universe. Now, likewise, we look at, all of us on this conscious journey, look at where we are today. Our separated self is the center of the universe today, is it not? We wake up on the pillow. I did, for most of my life. And well, it's me, me, and my body is myself. And, my parents are who I come from. And, it's my separated self that's the center of everything. That's this whole, where we were talking about old American dream thing. Now, as we know, when we're on the conscious journey, this old awakening experiences, we're warmed by the light of the divine. We're like, there's no such thing as a separated self, which, by the way, we could spend another hour on that one. We won't. But all the science, if we're following the current science in quantum physics, even biology, even geology, the Nobel Prize for Physics in October last year, 3 researchers, entanglement, that is saying that two things that could be hundreds of light years apart, no physical connection at all, deeply affecting each other, right? So that's bringing in kinetic energy, where, and again, scientists are the ones that are bringing this research forward, saying we're all deeply affecting everything. It's like a pebble thrown into a pond where these rings go out. likewise, we're like that. We're putting this kinetic energy out in every moment, even in our sleep state. There is no such thing as a separated self. So, um, and yet, the false belief that most of us grew up with, unless we were in a mystic family, a Sufi or something, was that we were a separated self. We had to kind of open our eyes to this awareness. Um, so the whole world today, in short, is mostly based on this whole separated self. From the time we wake up on the pillow, this is what's driving that old American dream thing: power over and fame and fortune, and life is the earth is a warehouse or as a refrigerator that's creating all this havoc, right? So now the only problem is there's no one Galileo that's saying, I'll take it, I got the courage, I'll take it, I'll go fix this and let the world know. There's no one person that can do that. It's us. It's all of us. So, and it's a Galileo moment because it's urgent now. I mean, the interesting thing is even if it wasn't urgent and we didn't have this existential crisis that we do have, we'd live this way because it's the delicious way to live. But what we do have an existential crisis, sixth great mass extinction, if we don't change our way of living on the earth. And so we're all, in a sense, called to be Galileo now. It's our moment where, and it's ultimate reality. So why would we want to keep thinking the sun is the center of the universe if it's not? Why would we want to keep putting our separated self at the center of everything if it's not even true that there's such a thing as a separated self? So just like Galileo, I mean, aren't we wise then to say, hey, I'm not going to live in this false ultimate reality. I'm going to live in the ultimate reality, seeing my connection, my essential self, my sovereignty as a part of the one, my divinity, right? I'm saying the same thing here. So that's how we pick up the pace. So planetary awakening, conscious evolution. How do we pick up the pace? This is how we pick up the pace, and it's urgent. In a sense, we all need to be Galileo now, and if we do it together, we'll create this beautiful future for ourselves and our kids and future generations.
And yes, I love that we all need to be Galileo. And I think Alexei Navalny was a recent Galileo who, went for his dream. He went back to Russia despite the fact that he knew how dangerous that was going to be. He gave his life for it, but he did not deter from his vision of what Russia could be. And so I think he was a Galileo. And I think there's many unsung heroes right now. And I think, along the lines of what you're saying, there's a lot of people waking up to this today. As I travel around and teach, there's people more and more waking up to their spirituality, to the sense of connection, but it hasn't hit our politics yet. So how do we bring it into the politics? Because that is really giving us quite the nightmare these days.
Yeah, it is. So I think, Martin Luther King's statement that darkness can't heal darkness. Only light can do that. I mean, I think he put his finger, boom, right on the button there. And that's how we don't try and we've got to shake off this whole fighting against thing. For example, I love Obama myself personally, but it's always fighting against, and it's like, oh, gee, no. We don't want to fight against. That's just going to perpetuate this thing, this polarity that'll get worse and worse. And we instead, this is being the Galileo, and you mentioned, this beautiful man who gave his life. Oh my God, what a brave person, huh? And his wife now, who's going to follow in his tracks. So to follow in these tracks is to just be what we're talking about: open-hearted in service, seeing the sacred, being healers in a sense, alchemists, where we're just talking about the truth that is now affirmed by modern science. We don't have to take it from mystics or conversations with God or any of that. Science is saying now this is true. This is how the universe works. There are many scientists that are sharing this, and I think we bring forward that science because it puts sort of a cement under our feet, and we just say, go. We're not trying to proselytize anyway. We're only trying to speak the truth from our heart, right? So I think that's how, and with politicians and out in the world, and we just walk this truth in. And as more and more of us do that, I think just like in Galileo's time, we will see a tipping point. Obviously, we all want to see that tomorrow, if not today. But this is where we've all got to just hold on to our truth and trust and have faith and live this way, and we'll do it together. And I think we are doing it together now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's well said, Steve. And we truly are on the cusp of something great or not great. I mean, I brought up the political moment. You brought up climate change. We truly live in an era of transition. More people are awakening, as you pointed out, Steve. Your own awakening is an inspiring story for many people. And then there's the level of people who are on that American dream. But there's a famous landmark book written in the 1960s or the 1970s by the scientist Thomas Kuhn, who wrote, it was The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he wrote that societies on the cusp of like a paradigm shift go through great disruptions. So it really seems like that's where we are. On the one hand, more and more people going towards that direction of conscious evolution, where it might reach that 100th monkey tipping point, and then this other segment that's small but just following that American dream or that sugar high of material pursuit. And for a lot of people, because of this transition, it feels unstable. It's so volatile, turbulent. You just see the news and all that, wars and political drama. So what would you say to Steve, to help people feel more grounded, to feel more hopeful, to feel like they're in the right place and they're resonant with the changes, the positive changes coming forth?
Our young people, boy, isn't it amazing how they are increased, this Generation Z and these other younger people that are embracing a lot of the things that we're talking about and saying, I am not going to go and just give myself away at work for a $50 check for, some sales contest. They're saying, don't even walk that sales contest in. I have no interest in that. Very hopeful. There are so many hopeful things going on here. This is not being reported by the media, but let's just go through a few of them. So one is, as we know, spirituality is just on this, is growing, right? Whereas just old mainstream religion, the separation thing is not growing. It's declining. This whole many of these practices that we would talk about, so embodied practices, yoga and qigong, look at how they're all taking off mindfulness. Look at how these things are mainstreaming. You go back 10, 15 years and you'd hear a little bit about yoga, hardly anything about mindfulness, right? So all of these various practices taking off, these embodied practices that people are participating in. Things like mediumship and near-death experience. So again, you go back 10 years and it was like, oh, so we're going to talk New Age here. You bring up these things. I remember being in a conference right here in Boulder, and they were talking about it from the stage. And then one guy came on and said, we're not going to go there to this, down to that level of, New Age. This is going to be a powerful program. Well, not anymore. Look at Suzanne Giesemann and Karen Noe and some of these others. I have the good fortune of working with them and creating master classes with them. Also near-death experience leaders, Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven, who we get to work with, and others like him. I'm working right now with Raymond Moody, who, he was the guy that created this whole conference now for near-death experience. What a beautiful man he is. We're working on a masterclass with him right now. Now, all of these people, their teachings are mainstreaming, and they're all saying essentially the same thing. So as they talk about the afterlife and transitioning, they talk about a life review, or sometimes they call it a panoramic life review. So I'm going to bring this in just because of Stephen Covey's, his 7 habits, and his habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. Oh, okay. Well, what's the end? Well, they're all saying the end is pretty much the same thing. The end is this panoramic life review. Not at the end of our lives, not going and seeing, our houses or stuff like that. It's actually not even getting into our own head. as they explain it, it's not like a recording, it's like real life where you're present and you're with from the time you're young to the end of your life other people. You're looking at yourself through their eyes, what you were emotionally stirring in them from the beginning of your life to the end of your life. And then the question is asked, so did you, did you accomplish what you wanted to, in your life? And that then informs kind of where your journey goes, and as you embody again and things. Well, okay, that's coming into the things we're talking about that are of importance here. And more people are learning about this whole life review thing, and which says, boy, if my ladder, like for me as a young person, my ladder was leaning against a different wall. We've been talking about that. But as I was learning and growing, I picked my ladder up and I moved it over to this other wall where I said, well, this is this is ultimate reality. I think a lot of people are doing that now as they're learning about mediumship and near-death experience and this whole life review thing and this whole, it's sort of a turnstile thing we're learning, right? That we go to the non-physical realm and then we come back to the physical realm. We've all had many lives. It's part of what omnipresence means. It means we have the same properties as the divine, and the divine has everlasting life, unlimited potential, as we know. We do too. So now there are many other things I could bring in here to talk as evidence, but in conscious business, so one of the big leaders is actually regenerative agriculture. Isn't it funny that agriculture would be an area that would be so progressive? But right now, you may know there are billions of dollars all over the planet pouring into regenerative agriculture, where they're saying the old way with weed killer and fertilizers and tractors that just bleed the land, they're now putting more and more livestock on the land and pure water. And then they're looking for a harvest that is going to be real nutritional for people that eat that harvest. So this is where agriculture is going. There are other examples of conscious business as well that are spreading. So these are just a few examples. I can promise you this journey, or I'm calling it migration to conscious living, is well on its way. We are well into it. We're not in the beginning stages, and we just need to really, it's an inside out job for us. We need to start with ourselves. I'm bringing in kind of what's happening collectively in the world, but my own journey, as I've been sharing here, it started with myself, of just seeing myself differently, seeing the world differently, and then living into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a couple comments and questions that have come in from the listeners. And as we get towards the end of the hour, I want to encourage listeners, you can write a question into the Q&A, or you can write it into the chat box. We're in a webinar format, so you won't be seen on screen, but we can read your question. And Dr. Joseph Peterson, a while back in our talk here, he said, I celebrate your transformation and sharing your vision along with many others. The Sufis take it one step further when you were talking about the divine downloads, that we are the divine. But when I was reading your book, I never got the sense that you saw us as separate from the divine. That's part of the illusion of separateness, that we are the divine. So I'm sure you would agree with that comment, but maybe you could speak to it.
Yeah. So now if I'm communicating and it sounds like I'm saying there's some separation, no, that's actually the whole thing here at its basis is there is no separation at all. And we don't, as a young Catholic person praying to the God up in the clouds, she's up there, but she's right here. and that's actually the basis for the teaching, in our daily practices, as we know, is it's an interior thing. We're going within. That's that still small voice. That's where we find it, is right there within. That's our soul's calling. That's actually where that's that divine presence within in our own, each of our bodies. So yeah, there's no separation whatsoever. We are, just like the Sufis said, we're living into its fullness. We're the fingerprints of God, so to speak.
Exactly. The expression, the breath, the mind, the feet, the hands. The same person asks, how would you, if you would, correlate what you're saying with what's happening in Israel, Gaza, and Ukraine and Russia? So
well, this is why this Galileo moment is so important, is this separated self, and in the separated self, then it's that little self where then we want to do these crazy things that we want a retribution and payback and all of these things. This is, what we've got to, it's the Einstein quote here, by the way, that, and I'm going to just give you two short quotes that in 1921, the greatest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation. Now, this is not a Sufi. This is Albert Einstein, 1921. Okay. And then after that, he said that no problem can be solved at the level of consciousness that created it. So this is as we talk about Middle East. So this little self, this separated self, where we're, thinking back to the stories of evolution where they say, and we're taught in school of, yeah, it's dog eat dog, it's all competition. It's the separated self thing. No, as we know, the newer scientists, Greg Braden's, Bruce Lipton's, Lynn McTaggart's, Dean Radden's, they're saying, no, it's a universe in harmony. That's an old story. Those are limiting beliefs we need to let go of. And as we let go of those and live into who we really are, which is this larger self, it's sort of like a cell in the body of the superorganism that we can call the world or the universe or cosmos. Then, let's take the Middle East. So where that horrible thing happened against the Israelis, we would not immediately go to war. What we would do probably is we would say, that, oh, this, we are, we're actually murdering ourselves here because we're all a part of each other. It's not just metaphor. There's, kidnapping and murdering ourselves. And we'd ask the world to stand with us and to create healing around this and to return those that were taken and put in place processes to assure health and security and all of these things. We wouldn't immediately go for, an eye for an eye because the whole world becomes blind, as we know, when we go right into an eye for an eye. Now, as I say these things, I know how hard this is. If you were an Israeli when this happened, or now where you're a Palestinian, right? Because once this gets going back and forth with the horrible things that have happened, there's massive trauma here. So now we've got to heal the massive trauma on top of these other things that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of trauma, I mean, historically, it's always been shown that often the oppressed become the oppressors. And so I heard Marianne Williamson talking recently and on the subject of trauma and talking about the oppressed become the oppressor. She said that when people individually, collectively don't process their trauma, they act out that trauma on others, and that's where the oppressed become the oppressors. Or the Jews with the trauma of the Holocaust, the Israelis, Jews, then now becoming the oppressors onto the Palestinians, and it just accelerates and continues that cycle of oppression, trauma, inflicting trauma on others, and then it just never ends. And it's going to what you speak, Steve, of that separation of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Psychologists, sociologists, archaeologists, they share this is true. When you go back through family lines, as you mentioned, the things that are so horrendous that happen oftentimes start earlier in a person's life, and that just generationally these things are passed down. So here's something I've brought in, when we were talking about the old American dream, and I brought in transactional and the pain there. This is as a practical application. This is one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that we can do. Is it's not enough to talk about, just audible about unity, diversity, and unity, and oneness, and divinity, and divine presence, and things. It's really living that out. That's the beauty. When I talk about the delicious life, that's the delicious life. So, and honestly, I had to sit with this one for a while. This was something that, again, dropped in here in the last couple of months, of where I was thinking about myself as a young man. I was 11 or 12, and I would go. I was also a paper boy. I'd knock on doors when they didn't pay me through the mail, and they'd open the door. I'm just 11 or 12. And say, "Oh, it's that kid again. He wants our money," And I'm just a little guy. I'm just I got to pay for my papers. I'm just,
You're racist.
think, if you think about too, just everybody here, even now, okay, in many homes, at the grocery store, in many, probably most workplaces, just think about the object to object conversation going on. And if that isn't bad enough, notice in magazines or posters how the model is looking at you in this just very transactional way. And so we're actually attracted to that. And the bottom line here is not just knowing, about unity and things or divinity. It's it's open. This is, in my opinion, it's about opening our heart. It's about living into this. About we don't think we're some special person over others. We're all special that way. That's the whole point. We're treating each other that way. Where we're really listening and loving and so on. So that's the most important thing here. And I think it becomes contagious because that's what creates the delicious life for me, is living this way. And we've got to. I'm not trying to admonish anything. We all grew up this way. It's what society is. It's our cultural story. But as Galileo, so to speak, where we just roll that back, see, this is not who we are, and we just demonstrate who we are, each of us in our own way.
That's a message for, people who want to help humanity shift. And I think there's many people that say, I know we need to shift. I know what we need to shift to, and they don't know quite what to do. They don't know quite where to get on board. And Humanity's Team is one of the places where they can join that team and they can get on board with you and follow what you're doing in the courses you have and the books you've got these programs. You've got a lot of free programs that you offer with speakers, and Neale Donald Walsch is often on them, and you offer a lot for help people have a leg up. Yeah, we're coming to the end of the hour. Please type any questions that you have for Steve before we close out. Or Michael, do you have any more questions?
Well, talking about Humanity's Team, and I just put the link in the chat box. What was your vision when you started Humanity's Team? When you started it with Neale Donald Walsch, what you had a grand vision towards it, I assume.
Yeah, the vision was, and it actually in Tomorrow's God, which is one of the 9 Conversations with God books, it's kind of interesting. You can read the conversation. It's kind of surreal for me because, where God and Neale are talking about Humanity's Team back and forth in the book Tomorrow's God. It's beautiful. And what is beautiful is we actually have grown into what they said we'd grow into, where it said this is going to be an organization. And in a sense, as we mentioned earlier in the program, we're all on Humanity's Team, right? All 8 billion of us. This is the one where there are no boundaries here, unless we create them. And we're not about, this is about aligning all of us and uniting us and coming into freedom, and the fullness of who we can be, all 8 billion of us. So, and that was the original vision there that God and Neale were talking about, is the way we framed it then. And June 2003 was awakening the world to oneness. Today, we frame it more as making conscious living pervasive worldwide by 2040. That was the download in 16 years from now. Conscious living is something that people mainstream can kind of grasp a little better, of the notion of living consciously. People generally want to do that. And then the whole awareness building process of, well, what does that entail? How do I do that? Of course, that's education. And as you mentioned, we have lots of free programs on the Humanity's Team website. Neale and I actually created a masterclass just recently that we did something with that we have never done before. And I'm not sure we can again, because we do have a large team and there's payroll. But we gathered all of this conscious living wisdom over about a 6-month period. Then we created a 16-module masterclass with mentoring called The Art and Science of Living Consciously. And if you go and see it on our Humanity's Team website, you go programs and you can pull it down. You can name your own price for this, up to including zero.
Wow.
You can go through this we just created this recently. It's a massive, beautiful masterclass, even for zero if you don't have any budget. And the reason we did that is this Galileo moment thing is real, and we said, okay, what investment can we make so that everybody can really sponge up all the wisdom that might be valuable.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Some different people are at different economic capabilities, so it's great that you are willing to give out wisdom and insight and offerings for people to do what they can afford.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it is a just like for you all. This is a calling,
Yeah.
and it is a Galileo moment. And I have kids, and even if I didn't, I would still. They're beautiful kids I see everywhere on the planet, and I've had a fantastic life, and I want everybody to have a fantastic life. It's a gorgeous planet. We can still do this detour thing, and create this whole beautiful way of living. And it's what I'm totally giving my life to, as I know you all are, and probably all of your viewers. That's why they're here.
That's why they're here, and we're all holding a more positive vision of the future, which really needs to be held right now. It's, I think the reason people are going for conspiracy theories and all of this is because there isn't a guiding myth of what we are becoming and what we are creating. And so we need to supply that. It's like nourishment for the collective soul. We did have another comment come in. If we are one, then we must feel torn. If we feel torn, then what happens to, quote, us? Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this conversation. And I think, yeah, we do feel torn. I mean, I feel torn when I read about the Middle East, when I read about Ukraine. I feel torn when I read about climate change. I feel, you know, there's a lot ripping at our hearts right now.
So here, honestly, is how it feels for me. Is I can totally relate to that because again, I grew up, as a Catholic altar boy, so I can relate to being torn and ambiguity and lack of clarity and just downright heading down the wrong, false beliefs, heading down the wrong path. So, but okay, honestly, this is how it is for me now. Is 2,500 years ago, it was said to focus on pure thought, and then joy will follow us like a shadow. Um, we know who that was 2,500 years ago. Then 2,000 years ago, it was said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Okay, I totally relate to both of these. So I do not feel torn. I feel now, and of course my daily practice is huge for me, as I imagine it is for all of you. Uh, and now it's just I know why I'm here. I know why we're all here to participate in this great shift of the ages. And this Martin Luther King thing that there'll be no value in me being anything other than just bringing this, just kind of being like fiber, where I let just God's light, come through, and just to share just the way we are on this beautiful program. So honestly, I'm not. I personally, I see, lots of things. I have compassion for lots of things, but I am clear on what mine is to do and how I'm to do that, and to be here, and just to engage with others, get into these kinds of questions and things. And all I can say is clarity is provided. This GPS, it's like a God protection system for me. Of there's like rails up, and I do hit the sides of the rails, as we all do. I do too, and then I know it when I do. It's like, oh, I, back to the center, and I'm going to go think over there. So that's what he does. The one that we're a part of is that kind of vision is laid out, that kind of guidance is laid out, that kind of support is laid out, and that honestly is how it feels for me.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you, Steve. What would you say are three ways, things people could do to help change humanity's future now, today?
So let me let's just step through some things real quick. First, my three E's are, this program is about creating awareness, which is so important. The next step then, of course, is education, which we've talked about. So I'm bringing in lots of science and research and spiritual. Nobody wants to take that from me, and we're not going to find our own journey into this if we don't do this ourselves. So education, where we really delve into all of this, the science, the spirituality, the embodied practice, the conscious business. We have, as has been mentioned, lots of free programs on the Humanities Team website. That's humanitiesteam with a Y.org. And up top, it has programs. You can pull down free programs. Just pull down the free programs. There's a whole bunch of them that you can go through. The next one is then the embody and express, which we talked about, which what good is a teaching if we're not living into it? And that's what creates the delicious lifestyle where we all will sleep well on the pillow tonight, even, where we're really embodying and expressing the teachings. The third one is the engage. So as we find our treasure, which I believe our generation is, it's what I'm calling conscious living, where we then have conversations like this and bring in questions, including the really tough questions, and engage others and just talk about what our own experience of this is. So those 3 E's are super important. I want to just add one other thing. The daily practice is so huge, and it's changed for me over the years in a massive way, from more answering basic questions for me in the early days. I remember I was in the Catholic Church, what is obedience? And then I found out there's no need for obedience. That's kind of its own discussion. I remember reading about mastery and like, what is mastery? I was really sitting with that for, in the 90s. What does mastery mean? There's a lot that we can bring into our own daily practice. Now, my daily practice has evolved into intention my whole day. And of course, intention is like a rudder on a boat, right? We're going to just go in a direction because we're intentional about our life. And then metaphysics is the huge one. That's the push is intention. Metaphysics is pull. Metaphysics is where we're actually seeing, feeling, tasting, and touching that future that we're creating, where divinity incarnate is kind of the operation of the earth. Everything knows that it's divinity incarnate. That's what it is, right? And we're living into that. There's this new spirituality that is a part of how we're living our lives. So then a big part of my daily practice now is really seeing that and feeling that, and how we can, in Humanities Team, support that as the unfolding into that happens. So daily practice, though, where we're going within this whole interior thing, and just communing, with the one, however we might do that, prayer, through meditation, through walking in nature. For me, I love being outside and just opening myself to the heart, which is the one, which is the omnipresence. And just as I mentioned, that it's very metaphysical for me now. It hasn't been for most of my years that I've done this, but now it's very metaphysical. But finding our own daily practice, it's really deeply supporting our conscious living lifestyle. And if we do it, if it's working, then like just you can tell I'm all amped up. I will carry this amped up energy throughout my day. I get that from my daily practice, and I think all of us can get that from our own daily practice.
Beautiful. Yes, I think it comes down to practice in the end. Practice and practice and practice till we get it right.
Right. Yeah, and just the journey
too.
is beautiful, and we know we're giving our best. We don't have to be perfect or excellent all the time, but we're truly giving our best, and we can feel good about that if we're truly giving our best.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think, your phrasing of the movement from the American dream to a new universal dream is really perfect. It really sums up our times and where we our aspiration and where we need to go.
So folks,
Yeah, thank you what a great discussion it's been. Thank you for leading this whole discussion. And yeah, hopefully we've got a couple of tools in here.
Yeah.
People.
Folks, here's the book. That is Steve's new book, and check out all the offerings on Humanities Team. And it has been a real pleasure to have this discussion. It's just right up my alley. I look forward to more discussions. I know we have some on the books, and I really want to get into the theology discussion. And let's see, our next guest is on what day, Michael? It's nice to always
March 28th.
Right.
Thursday.
And that is, I should have this prepared.
Richard Flyer,
Symbiotic Culture. So should be an interesting interview, and we have lots more coming up. We're scheduled out through July, and just keep those, if you want, spread the word so we get more people. And the more people we get, the more guests we can have, and it all mushrooms into the world we want to see, the world we're creating with the future. This is Voices for the Future. Thank you so much, Steve Farrell, for your just unbridled vision and dedication to a life of a visionary. And we hold that vision with you.
Thank you, Steve. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you again for having me. Anadea, Michael, just been a true pleasure. Godspeed to you all with your beautiful program, huh?
Thank you.
Namaste.
Yeah.
Namaste. Yeah, to viewers, thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
And thank you all for listening. We'll see you next month.
Yeah. Bye.